The massive ship hung in the sky like a dark moon. It was so large that it blocked the sun over Seoul, casting a shadow that stretched for miles. People on the streets stopped and looked up. Some ran, some screamed, but most just stood there, frozen, watching something they had only seen in movies. Princess Yuna stood at the observation window of her father's flagship. She looked down at the blue and green planet below, Earth. She had read about this world in her studies. The humans who lived here were young as a species. They had only discovered space travel a few decades ago. They were like children compared to the Valari, who had ruled the stars for 10,000 years. Yuna's skin was pale silver blue, like moonlight on water. Her eyes were deep violet, and her long white hair fell past her shoulders. She wore the formal robes of Valari royalty, heavy with golden threads and precious stones. On her head sat a thin circlet made of pure starlight crystal. It marked her as the daughter of Emperor Taiho, ruler of 12 star systems and commander of the greatest fleet in the known galaxy. Her father stood beside her, his hands clasped behind his back. Emperor Taiho was tall and powerful, with sharp features and cold eyes. He looked at Earth the way a merchant looks at goods for sale. A primitive world, he said. But it has potential. The humans breed quickly and adapt to anything. They could be useful. Yuna said nothing. She had learned long ago that her father did not want her opinions. He wanted her obedience. You will accompany me to the surface, Taiho continued. Watch how I handle these creatures. Learn. One day, you will need to command lesser species yourself. The shuttle ride down to Earth took only minutes. Yuna watched through the window as they descended through clouds and emerged above a vast city. Tall buildings rose like silver needles. Rivers of lights moved through the streets below. It was beautiful in a strange, chaotic way. They landed at a large building where human leaders had gathered. Soldiers in black uniforms stood in perfect lines. Important-looking people in formal clothes waited nervously. When Emperor Taiho stepped off the shuttle, every human bowed low. Yuna followed her father, keeping her face calm and empty. This was her duty. To stand beside him. To look powerful and cold. To remind these humans that they were nothing compared to the Valari Empire. The reception hall was decorated with flowers and lights. Humans moved around offering food and drinks. Music played softly. Yuna found it all strange but interesting. The Valari did not celebrate like this. Their gatherings were formal and quiet, full of political games and hidden threats. A human official approached them. He was an older man with gray hair and worried eyes. Through a translation device, he welcomed the emperor and offered the hospitality of Earth. Taiho nodded once, the smallest gesture of acceptance. We require a liaison, he said. Someone to guide my daughter while I conduct negotiations. She wishes to study your culture. This was not true. Yuna had not asked for anything, but she understood. Her father wanted her out of the way while he made his plans. The official bowed again. Of course, Your Imperial Majesty. We have prepared someone. Lieutenant Park Jiseok is one of our finest officers. A young man stepped forward. He wore a simple military uniform, nothing fancy. His hair was black and cut short. His face was ordinary but pleasant. He had the kind of eyes that seemed to hold warmth, though he was clearly nervous. Jiseok bowed deeply to Yuna. Your Highness, he said. It is my honor to serve as your guide. Yuna looked at him with little interest. Just another human. Just another primitive creature trying not to anger his superiors. She had seen this 100 times on 100 worlds. Very well, she said. Her voice was flat and cold, as she had been trained. The first day was boring. Jiseok showed her museums and government buildings. He explained human history, their wars and discoveries, their art and music. Yuna listened but did not respond much. She was a princess of the Valari Empire. She did not need to make conversation with a human soldier. But on the second day, something changed. They were walking through a memorial park. Stone monuments stood in rows, each one carved with names. HFY stopped in front of one and stood quietly for a long moment. "What is this place?" Yuna asked. "A memorial," HFY said, "for soldiers who died in a war many years ago. Each name here is someone who gave their life to protect others." Yuna looked at the endless rows of stones. "There are so many." "Yes." HFY's voice was soft. Every name was a person. They had families, dreams, people who loved them. He touched one of the stones gently. "We remember them, not as numbers, but as individuals." This confused Yuna. In the Valari Empire, soldiers who died were simply replaced. Their names were recorded in data files and forgotten. Death in service was expected. It was not something to mourn. "Why?" she asked. "They are gone. Remembering them changes nothing." HFY looked at her. For a moment, his nervousness disappeared. "Because they mattered," he said. "Every life matters, even after it ends. Remembering them is how we honor their sacrifice. It is how we remind ourselves what we are fighting for." Yuna had no answer for this. She turned away and walked on, but his words stayed in her mind. Later that evening, they stopped at a small restaurant. HFY ordered food for both of them. Strange dishes with colors and smells Yuna had never experienced. She tried to eat with the wooden sticks humans used and failed badly. The food kept falling. HFY laughed. Not at her, but with warmth. "Here," he said, and showed her how to hold them properly. His hand briefly touched hers. The moment their skin made contact, Yuna gasped. The Valari had a gift. They could sense emotions through touch. It was why they rarely touched anyone. Emotions were messy, distracting, dangerous. Valari trained themselves to feel nothing. But when Yuna touched HFY's hand, she felt everything. She felt warmth, like sunshine. She felt sadness, old and deep, but not bitter. She felt hope, stubborn and bright, refusing to die. She felt kindness, real and true, asking nothing in return. And beneath it all, she felt a fierce belief that every person, no matter how small or weak, deserved to be treated with dignity. Yuna pulled her hand back quickly. Her heart was beating fast. She had touched many beings in her life. Valari nobles with their cold ambition, conquered peoples with their fear and hatred. But she had never felt anything like this. HFY noticed her reaction. "Are you okay, Your Highness?" "I am fine," Yuna said quickly. She looked away, trying to compose herself. But she was not fine. Something had awakened inside her. Something she did not understand. That night, back on the flagship, Emperor Taiho summoned her to his chambers. He sat on his throne, studying a holographic display of Earth. "You spent the day with the human soldier," he said. "Yes, father." "As you instructed." Taiho's eyes narrowed slightly. "Be careful, daughter. Humans are emotional creatures. They form attachments easily. They might mistake your attention for interest." He waved his hand dismissively. "Do not let them forget what they are. And do not forget what you are." "Yes, father," Yuna said, bowing her head. But as she returned to her quarters, she could not stop thinking about the memorial park, about HFY's gentle laugh, about the warmth she had felt when their hands touched. For the first time in her life, Princess Yuna of the Valari Empire was curious about a human, and that curiosity would change everything. The days turned into weeks, and Yuna found reasons to stay on Earth. She told her father she was studying human culture for the Empire's benefit. She told herself the same thing. But deep down, she knew the truth. She wanted to see HFY again. Every morning, he would meet her at the shuttle bay with a small bow and a warm smile. He never treated her like she was better than him. He never trembled with fear like other humans did around Valari. He simply talked to her like she was a person, not a princess. It was strange. It was wonderful. It was terrifying. One evening, HFY took her to a night market in Bizon. The streets were crowded with humans laughing and talking. Lights hung between buildings like colorful stars. The smell of cooking food filled the air. Musicians played on corners, while children ran between the stalls. Yuna had never seen anything like it. Valari cities were clean and quiet. Everything had its place. Everything was controlled. But here, there was beautiful chaos. Life happening in all directions at once. What is this? Yuna asked, looking around with wide eyes. Just a market, HFY said, smiling at her reaction. People come here to eat, shop, and enjoy themselves. Nothing special. It is special, Yuna said before she could stop herself. It is alive. HFY bought her street food from a small cart. Some kind of fried dough covered in sugar. Yuna took a small bite and made a face. Too sweet, she said. But when HFY was not looking, she ate the rest of it. And then asked for another one. They walked through the market for hours. HFY showed her how humans bargained with sellers, how friends greeted each other with hugs, how couples walked hand in hand without shame. In the Valari Empire, such displays of emotion were considered weak. But here, they seemed natural, real. You are different from other humans, Yuna said as they sat on a bench by the water. HFY laughed softly. Am I? I think I am very ordinary. No, Yuna shook her head. Others fear me. They bow and shake and say what they think I want to hear. But you speak to me honestly. Why? HFY was quiet for a moment. He looked out at the water, where lights from the city reflected like scattered jewels. When I was young, he said slowly, I had a sister. Her name was Somi. She was bright and kind and full of life. She always told me that people are just people, no matter their title or position. She said everyone deserves respect, even if you are afraid of them. Especially if you are afraid of them. What happened to her? HFY's face became sad. There was an accident. A fire. I could not save her. He paused, his voice becoming thick. I was supposed to protect her, but I failed. Yuna felt something strange in her chest. A tightness. A pain that was not her own. She had never experienced sympathy before. Valari did not allow themselves such weakness. I am sorry, she said. The words felt clumsy in her mouth, but she meant them. HFY looked at her with surprise. Then he smiled, a small, sad smile. Thank you, Your Highness. Yuna, she said suddenly. When we are alone, call me Yuna. His eyes widened. Using a royal's personal name was forbidden in the Valari Empire. It was punishable by death. But here, on this strange little planet, the rules seemed far away. Yuna, HFY said softly. The way he spoke her name made her heart beat faster. The weeks continued to pass. Yuna learned more about humans than any Valari had before. She visited schools where children learned to read and dream. She saw hospitals where doctors fought to save every life, no matter how poor or unimportant the patient was. She watched movies that made her laugh and cry, emotions she had been taught to suppress since birth. And always, HFY was beside her, patient, kind, never asking for anything, never trying to use her position for his benefit. He simply enjoyed her company, and she enjoyed his. One night, they sat on a rooftop watching the stars. Yuna pointed to a distant light. That is my home system, she said. 12 planets. Billions of people. The heart of an empire that has conquered half the galaxy. Do you miss it? HFY asked. Yuna thought about this for a long time. She thought about the cold halls of the palace. the endless political games, her father's disapproving eyes, the future that waited for her, arranged and controlled down to the smallest detail. "No," she whispered. "I do not miss it at all." But her peace could not last up. One morning, Emperor THFY summoned her to his war room. Holographic displays showed Earth from every angle. Troop movements, resource calculations, population data. "Our scientists have made a discovery," THFY said, his voice cold and businesslike. "Humans possess a genetic trait that makes them remarkably adaptable. Their DNA can bond with almost any species. If we integrate human genetics into Valari bloodlines, we could become stronger than ever before." Yuna felt ice in her stomach. "What are you saying, Father?" "Earth will not be an ally," THFY said simply. "It will be a resource. We will take what we need. The humans will serve the Empire, whether they choose to or not." "Father, you cannot." "I can. And I will." THFY turned to face her, his eyes hard as stone. "There is more. Lord Hyok has requested your hand in marriage." "I have agreed." The world seemed to stop. Lord Hyok was a Valari general, famous for his cruelty. He had crushed rebellions on a dozen worlds, killing millions without mercy. He was old enough to be her grandfather, and his eyes held nothing but hunger for power. "No," Yuna breathed. "Father, please. This is not a request." THFY's voice was final. "You are my daughter. Your marriage will strengthen our alliance with the military council. It is your duty to the Empire. I do not love him. I do not even like him. He is a monster. Love?" THFY laughed, a cold sound. "Love is a human weakness. We are Valari. We do not love. We rule." He stepped closer to her, his shadow falling over her like a threat. "You will return to the homeworld in 3 days. You will marry Hyok, and you will forget whatever foolishness this primitive planet has put in your head." He turned away, dismissing her. Yuna walked out of the war room in a daze. Her legs carried her to the shuttle bay without thought. She took a ship down to Earth. She did not know where she was going. She only knew she had to get away. Rain was falling when she landed in Seoul, heavy sheets of water that soaked through her robes in seconds. She did not care. She walked through the empty streets, her tears mixing with the rain. She found herself at Jiseok's apartment building. A small, simple place, nothing like the grand structure she was used to. She stood outside his door for a long time, shivering, unsure what to do. Then the door opened. Jiseok stood there in simple clothes, his eyes full of concern. "Yuna? What happened? Are you okay?" She looked at him. This human, this ordinary, wonderful human who had shown her more kindness than anyone in her entire life. "No," she said, her voice breaking. "I am not okay." And for the first time since she was a child, Princess Yuna of the Valari Empire allowed herself to cry. Jiseok did not ask questions. He simply pulled her inside, wrapped a warm blanket around her shoulders, and held her while she sobbed. He asked for nothing. He judged nothing. He was just there, solid and warm and real. When the tears finally stopped, Yuna told him everything. Her father's plans for Earth, the arranged marriage to a cruel man, the future closing around her like a cage. Jiseok listened in silence. When she finished, he took her hands in his. "What do you want, Yuna?" he asked softly. "Not your father, not the Empire. What do you want?" No one had ever asked her that before. In her entire life, no one had ever cared what she wanted. She looked into his eyes, and she knew the answer. "I want to be free," she said. "I want to choose my own life. And I want—" She hesitated, afraid to say the words. "I want to be with you." Jiseok's eyes widened. But he did not pull away. He did not laugh or look at her with pity. Instead, he smiled. And in that smile, Yuna saw something she had never seen before. Hope. The rain continued to fall outside, but inside HFY's small apartment, everything felt warm and safe. Yuna sat on his simple couch, wrapped in a blanket, holding a cup of hot tea between her hands. The steam rose up and warmed her face. HFY sat across from her, his expression serious but kind. He had listened to everything she said without interrupting. Now he was thinking, processing, trying to understand the weight of what she had told him. "Your father wants to conquer Earth," he said slowly. "And he wants you to marry someone you hate." "Yes." Yuna stared into her tea. "In 3 days, I am supposed to return to the homeworld. The wedding will happen within a week. After that, my life will no longer be my own." It never really was. And what about Earth? What happens to us? Yuna closed her eyes. "The invasion will begin soon after. My father has already made the plans. Your governments will be given a choice. Surrender and serve the Empire, or be destroyed. Either way, humans will become property of Valari." HFY was quiet for a long moment. Yuna expected him to be angry, to shout, to blame her for her father's crimes. She would have understood. She almost wanted him to hate her. It would make leaving easier, but when she looked up, his eyes held no anger, only sadness. "That is not your fault," he said gently. "You did not choose to be born a princess. You did not make these decisions, but I did nothing to stop them." Tears burned in Yuna's eyes again. "I knew my father was cruel. I saw what the Empire did to other worlds. I stayed silent. I obeyed. I am just as guilty." "No." HFY moved to sit beside her. He took her hand carefully, as if she might break. "Yuna, listen to me. You were raised in a cage. Your whole life, they told you how to think, how to feel, what to believe. Breaking free from that is not easy. But you are here now. You came to me. That means something." Yuna looked at their joined hands. His skin was warm against her silver blue fingers. Through their touch, she could feel his emotions. He was afraid, yes. Afraid for his world, for his people, for his own life. But beneath the fear, there was something stronger. He believed in her. "I have never met anyone like you," she whispered. "You have every reason to hate me, to use me as a bargaining chip with my father. But you do not. Why?" HFY smiled softly. "Because that is not who I am. And I do not think it is who you are, either." He squeezed her hand. "You are not your father, Yuna. You are not the Empire. You get to decide who you want to be. What if I do not know who that is? Then we figure it out together." For a moment, the universe felt very small. Just the two of them in this tiny room, the rain outside, the warmth between their hands. Yuna wanted to stay in this moment forever, but the universe would not let them. A harsh light suddenly filled the room. The wall flickered and transformed into a holographic display. Emperor Taiho's face appeared, larger than life, his eyes burning with cold fury. "Daughter." Yuna stood quickly, her heart pounding. "Father, you left the flagship without permission. You came to the surface alone. You are in the home of a human." Taiho's voice was ice. "Explain yourself." Yuna's mouth was dry. She had been trained her whole life to obey this man. His voice triggered something deep inside her. An automatic response to submit, to apologize, to beg forgiveness. But when she looked at HFY standing beside her, that training began to crack. "I needed time to think," she said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Think?" Taiho laughed, the sound cold and mocking. "You are a princess of the Valari Empire. You do not think. You obey." His eyes moved to HFY. "This is the human they assigned to you. A soldier. A nobody, his lip curled with disgust. Have you grown attached to this creature? Yuna said nothing. Her silence was answer enough. I see. Taiho's expression hardened. Then I will make this simple. You will return to the flagship immediately. You will marry Lord Hyok as planned. And you will never see this human again. If you refuse, he paused, letting the threat hang in the air. You will be declared a traitor. You will be stripped of your title, your name, your heritage. You will be nothing, and your human friend will be executed as a spy. He has done nothing wrong. He has corrupted a princess of the royal bloodline. That is crime enough. Taiho's eyes were merciless. Choose, daughter. Your duty or your destruction. You have 5 minutes. The hologram flickered but stayed active. Soldiers would already be on their way. Yuna knew the protocols. She had seen her father destroy others who defied him. He would not hesitate to do the same to her. Her whole body was shaking. Everything she had ever known told her to surrender, to accept her fate, to protect herself by obeying. But then Jisiok did something unexpected. He stepped forward, placing himself between Yuna and the hologram. A human soldier standing before the most powerful emperor in the galaxy. His hands were trembling, but his voice was calm. Your Majesty, he said. May I speak? Taiho's eyes narrowed. You dare address me? I mean no disrespect. Jisiok bowed his head briefly. But before you take your daughter, I want you to understand something. About humanity. About what you are trying to conquer. I have no interest in the opinions of insects. Then listen anyway. Because one day, you might wish you had. Jisiok took a breath. Yuna watched him with wonder. This ordinary man, facing down an emperor without weapons or power, armed with nothing but his words. You think humans are weak because we feel emotions, Jisiok said. You think love and compassion make us lesser. But you are wrong. Those things make us stronger than you can imagine. He gestured around the small room. Look at what we have built. Not with conquest, but with cooperation. We survived ice ages and plagues and wars that nearly destroyed us. Every time we fell, we got back up. Not because we were told to, but because we chose to. Because we love our families, our friends, our world enough to fight for them. Pretty words, Taiho said. They will not stop my fleet. Maybe not. Jisiok met the Emperor's eyes without flinching. But they will stop your daughter. Taiho's expression flickered with something. Surprise? Anger? Your daughter is not a tool, Jisiok continued. She's not a bargaining chip or a political asset. She is a person. She has thoughts and dreams and feelings, whether you taught her to hide them or not. You can force her to marry your general. You can force her to obey your commands. But you will never have her heart. And without her heart, you have nothing. The room was silent. Rain continued to fall outside. Yuna stared at Jisiok's back. No one had ever defended her before. No one had ever stood up for her, especially not against her father. She felt something breaking inside her. Not something bad. Something that had kept her trapped for too long. Emperor Taiho's face was stone. You have signed your death warrant, human. Maybe. Jisiok's voice was steady. But at least I will die free. Can you say the same about yourself? Before Taiho could respond, the door burst open. Valari soldiers poured into the small apartment, their weapons raised. Seize them both, Taiho commanded. The soldiers moved forward. Yuna felt hands grabbing her arms. She saw more soldiers surrounding Jisiok, forcing him to his knees. And in that moment, something inside her snapped. No. The word came out quiet at first, then louder. No! No! Yuna pulled free from the soldiers with a strength she did not know she had. She stood in the center of the room, breathing hard, her eyes blazing. I am done. Her voice shook but did not break. I am done being your puppet. I am done being traded like property. I am done pretending I do not feel, that I do not care, that I do not want more than the life you have chosen for me. She reached up to the circlet on her head, the symbol of her royal blood, the chain that had bound her since birth. Slowly, deliberately, she removed it. The circlet fell from her fingers and clattered on the floor. In the hologram, Emperor Taiho's face twisted with rage. What are you doing? Yuna looked at her father. For the first time in her life, she was not afraid of him. I am choosing, she said. I choose him. I choose humanity. And I choose myself. She reached down and took Jisiok's hand, pulling him to his feet. He looked at her with amazement and something else. Something that made her heart feel like it was flying. You will regret this, Taiho snarled. You will lose everything. Yuna smiled. A real smile, the first one in longer than she could remember. No, father, she said. I am finally gaining everything that matters. The hologram flickered and died. The soldiers hesitated, unsure what to do without direct orders. Jisiok squeezed her hand. What now? Yuna looked out the window at the dark sky. Somewhere up there, her father's fleet was preparing for war. Everything was about to change. Now, she said, we fight. The news spread across Earth like wildfire. Every screen, every radio, every device carried the same story. An alien princess had abandoned her empire. She had chosen a human soldier over her throne. And now the Valari were coming in the first hours after her choice. Yuna and Jisiok escaped from the apartment with help from his military contacts. They made their way to a secure underground base where human leaders had gathered in emergency session. Presidents and generals, scientists and strategists, all crowded into a room filled with screens showing the massive Valari fleet positioning itself around the planet. Emperor Taiho had not wasted time. Within 6 hours of Yuna's defiance, he announced a complete blockade of Earth. No ships could enter or leave. No communications could reach the outside galaxy. The message was clear. Surrender the traitor princes or face destruction. Yuna stood before the assembled leaders, feeling their fear and distrust. To them, she was still the enemy, the daughter of the man who threatened their world. Some wanted to hand her over immediately. Others wanted to lock her away. A few whispered that she should simply be killed, but Jisiok stood beside her, and his presence gave her courage. I know you have no reason to trust me, Yuna said, her voice carrying through the silent room. My father has threatened your world. My people have conquered dozens of species before you. By every logical measure, I am your enemy. She paused, looking at the faces around her. Humans of every color and background, united by fear of what was coming. But I am not my father. I rejected everything I was raised to believe because I saw something in humanity that my people have forgotten. You feel, you love, you fight for each other, not because someone orders you to, but because you choose to. That is a strength my father will never understand. An older general stepped forward. His face was hard, his voice suspicious. Pretty speech. But your father has 100 warships up there. We have nothing that can match them. What exactly are you offering besides words? Knowledge, Yuna said simply. I know Valari technology. I know their tactics. I know their weaknesses. She took a breath. And they have more weaknesses than they want anyone to believe. For the next several hours, Yuna shared everything she knew. Shield frequencies that could be disrupted. Sensor systems that could be fooled. The arrogance of Valari commanders who believed no primitive species could challenge them. She drew diagrams, answered questions, and never once held back information. Slowly, the distrust in the room began to fade. Not completely. Trust would take time, but respect began to grow in its place. A young woman pushed through the crowd. She had sharp eyes and quick hands, and she introduced herself as Captain Nari, a fighter pilot who had trained her whole life for a battle she hoped would never come. "If what you say is true," Nari said, studying Yuna's diagrams, "then we might have a chance. A small one, but a chance." "It will not be easy," Yuna warned. "My father is cruel, but he is not stupid. He will expect resistance." "Good." Nari smiled, a fierce expression. "Let him expect. We will give him more than he bargained for." The planning began in earnest. Human scientists worked around the clock, adapting their technology based on Yuna's information. They developed devices that could disrupt the Lari shields for short periods. They created false signals that would confuse enemy sensors. They trained pilots in new tactics designed specifically to exploit Valari arrogance. A hacker named Do-Yun, barely 20 years old but brilliant with computers, figured out how to tap into Valari communication channels. For the first time, humans could hear what their enemies were saying to each other, and what they heard was surprising. Not every Valari supported the Emperor's plan. Many in the fleet were uncomfortable with the idea of harvesting humans for genetic material. It reminded them too much of the darkest periods in their own history, when the Valari had done the same to other species. The practice had been outlawed centuries ago. To bring it back felt wrong. "We can use this," HFY said, studying the intercepted messages. "If we can reach these dissatisfied soldiers, make them question what they are doing." "A war of information," Yuna nodded. "My father controls through fear. But fear is fragile. One crack and it can shatter." Do-Yun got to work. Within days, he had created a broadcast that could be sent directly to every ship in the Valari fleet. The message showed Emperor Taiho's real plans. Not protection or alliance, but conquest and exploitation. It showed recordings of his war room, where he had discussed humans as nothing more than resources to be used and discarded. The broadcast ended with a simple question: "Is this who we want to be?" When the message went out, chaos erupted in the Valari fleet. Ships began refusing orders. Commanders argued with each other. For the first time, Emperor Taiho's iron control began to slip, but he was not defeated yet. "Prepare for planetary bombardment," Taiho commanded. "If they will not surrender, they will burn." The countdown began. In 12 hours, the first strikes would fall on Earth's major cities. Billions would die. Human civilization would end. In the underground base, despair began to spread. Some people wept. Others prayed. A few simply sat in silence, waiting for the end. But HFY refused to give up. "We still have time," he said, standing before the remaining leaders. 12 hours. That is enough. Enough for what? Someone asked bitterly. "We cannot fight their fleet. We cannot stop their weapons." "No," HFY agreed. "But we can make them believe we can." He outlined a desperate plan. An engineer named Yunji had discovered a way to use Earth's satellite network to create false sensor readings. They could make the Valari believe Earth's defenses were 10 times stronger than they actually were. Combined with the chaos already spreading through the fleet, it might be enough to make them hesitate. "It is a bluff," the general said skeptically. "If they call it, then we die," HFY said simply. "But we die fighting. We die on our feet, not on our knees. Is that not better than surrendering and living as slaves?" The room was silent. Then, one by one, people began to nod. "Let us do this," Nari said, her voice firm. The next 11 hours were a blur of activity. Yunji worked on the satellite network, programming the false signals. Do-Yun continued broadcasting messages to divide the Valari fleet, Scientists made final adjustments to their anti-shield devices. Pilots prepared their ships for what might be their final flight. Yuna worked alongside them all, translating technical specifications, predicting Valari responses, and doing everything she could to give Earth a chance. And through it all, HFY was there, calm, steady, inspiring others with quiet words and unwavering determination. Yuna watched him and felt something she had never felt before. Not just love, though that was part of it. Pride. Pride in this human. This ordinary, extraordinary man, who refused to accept defeat even when the entire galaxy said he should die as the final hour approached. Yunji activated the false signals. On Valari sensors, Earth suddenly appeared to have a planetary defense grid capable of destroying half their fleet. Weapons platforms that did not exist. Ships that were nothing but ghosts. For a long, terrible moment, nothing happened. Then the Valari fleet stopped. Communications channels exploded with confusion. Ship commanders demanded clarification. Some called for retreat. Others insisted the readings must be wrong. Emperor Taiho screamed orders that fewer and fewer people obeyed in the underground base. Humans watched the chaos with held breath. The bombardment countdown reached 0. Nothing happened. No weapons fired. No cities burned. The Valari fleet hung in space, paralyzed by confusion and doubt, and the first real challenge they had faced in 1,000 years. And in that moment, humanity realized something incredible. They had survived. The war was not over. The real fight was just beginning. But for now, against all odds, Earth still stood. HFY found Yuna in a quiet corner of the base. She was trembling, overwhelmed by everything that had happened. "We did it," he said softly. Yuna shook her head in amazement. "You did it. Your people. She could not find the words. HFY took her hands. "You gave us a chance. That is all we ever needed." He smiled, that warm smile she had grown to love. "Never underestimate humanity when you give us a chance." Outside, the sun was beginning to rise. A new day was dawning on Earth. The battle was far from over. But for the first time, victory seemed possible. The standoff lasted 3 days. 3 days of tense waiting, of negotiations that went nowhere, of Emperor Taiho growing more furious with each passing hour. His fleet remained in orbit, but they did not attack. The false sensor readings had worked better than anyone hoped. Combined with the growing unrest among his own people, Taiho found himself in a position he had never experienced before. Weakness. But the Emperor was not the type of man to accept defeat gracefully. If he could not conquer Earth through overwhelming force, he would try another way. On the 4th day, a message came from the Valari High Council. This was a group of elder leaders who advised the Emperor, though they had little real power. For centuries, they had simply approved whatever Taiho wanted. But something had changed. The broadcast from Earth had reached them. They had seen the evidence of Taiho's plans to harvest humans, and they were not pleased. "The Council has called for a review of your actions," Taiho's advisor reported nervously. "They say the genetic harvesting plan violates ancient law. They demand you return to the homeworld to answer questions." Taiho's face twisted with rage. "I am the Emperor. I do not answer to anyone." But his power was slipping. More ships in his fleet refused orders. Soldiers who had once feared him now whispered of rebellion. The empire he had ruled with an iron fist was cracking beneath him. In desperation, Taiho made one final move. Lord Hyuk, the cruel general who was supposed to marry Yuna, had remained loyal. He commanded a squadron of elite warships crewed by soldiers who shared his brutal philosophy. While the rest of the fleet hesitated, Hyuk gathered his forces. "Let me end this," Hyuk said to Taiho through a private channel. "I will destroy their major cities. I will burn their resistance, and I will bring the traitor princes back in chains. Taiyo hesitated. Part of him knew this was madness. Part of him wanted to cut his losses and retreat. But his pride would not allow it. Do it, he said finally. Show these humans what happens when they defy the Volari Empire. HFY's squadron broke formation and began its descent toward Earth. In the underground base, alarms screamed. Screens showed the approaching ships, their weapons already charging. They are heading for Seoul, Tokyo, Beijing, Nari reported, her voice tight. 12 ships. Heavy cruisers. Our anti-shield devices might work on one or two, but not all of them. The room fell into chaos. This was the moment they had feared. The bluff had bought them time, but now reality was coming with fire and death. HFY stepped forward, his face pale but determined. We need to intercept them. Buy the city's time to evacuate. With what? The general demanded. We have a handful of fighter jets against warships. It would be suicide. Then it is suicide. HFY's voice was calm. But what choice do we have? If we do nothing, millions die. If we fight, we might slow them down. Every minute counts. Nari stood beside him. I am with you. My squadron is ready. Other pilots stepped forward. Engineers, scientists, people who had never been soldiers but were willing to become ones now. Not because they were ordered to, but because they chose to. Yuna watched them, her heart breaking with admiration. This was what her father could never understand. Humans did not fight because they expected to win. They fought because fighting was right. Because giving up was worse than death. She turned to HFY. I am coming with you. Yuna, no. You are too valuable. Your knowledge. My knowledge is already shared. Everything I know, your scientists have now. She took his hand. But there's something else I can do. My people have gifts. I can sense intentions, predict movements. If we fly together, I can tell you what HFY will do before he does it. HFY looked into her eyes. He wanted to argue. He wanted to protect her. But he also knew she was right. Together then, he said. 20 minutes later, they were in the air. Nari led a squadron of 12 fighter jets, climbing toward the stars. Behind them, evacuation sirens wailed in cities across the Pacific. The Volari cruisers grew larger on their screens. Massive ships, bristling with weapons, each one capable of destroying a city with a single shot. This is crazy, one of the pilots muttered over the radio. This is humanity, Nari replied. Now focus. The battle began. Human jets swarmed around the cruisers like wasps attacking giants. Their weapons were tiny compared to Volari firepower. But they had something the enemy did not expect. Speed, creativity, and the anti-shield devices that Yunji's team had. Built the first cruisers. Shields flickered and died as Nari's squadron unleashed everything they had. Missiles struck exposed systems. The great ship shuddered, then began to fall. The other cruisers responded with devastating fire. Human jets exploded like fireworks. Pilots died in seconds. But for everyone that fell, another took its place. HFY flew in a modified jet with Yuna beside him. She had never flown before, never been in combat, but her gift was working perfectly. She could feel HFY's intentions, the movements of his mind transmitting through the touch of her hand on HFY's arm. Left, she shouted. He is firing left. HFY banked hard. Plasma fire shot past them, close enough to melt their wingtip. But they survived. He is coming around. He wants to hit the lead ship. He thinks that is Nari. Then let us give him a surprise. HFY pushed the throttle forward. Their jet screamed toward HFY's personal cruiser, the flagship of his squadron. It was larger than the others, covered in battle scars from 100 conquests. "What are you doing?" Yuna gasped. "Ending this." The anti-shield device activated. For 3 seconds, HFY's shields dropped. 3 seconds was all HFY needed. He fired everything. Missiles, cannons, even the emergency flares. All of it slammed into HFY's cruiser in a blinding explosion. The cruiser's engine core ruptured. For a moment, the great ship seemed to hang in space, broken and burning. Then it exploded in a ball of white fire that lit up the sky. Lord HFY, the butcher of a dozen worlds, was dead. The remaining cruisers hesitated. Their commander was gone. Their shields were failing. And below them, more human jets were rising, a ragged but defiant force that refused to stop fighting. One by one, the cruisers turned and fled back to the main fleet. The battle was over. In the aftermath, everything changed. The Valari High Council moved quickly. With HFY dead and THFY's credibility destroyed, they voted to remove the Emperor from power. It was unprecedented. In 10,000 years, no Valari Emperor had been deposed. But THFY's arrogance had finally caught up with him. He was taken back to the homeworld in chains to face judgment for his crimes against the Council's laws. Some said he was executed. Others said he was locked away in eternal imprisonment. Yuna never learned the truth, and she did not care to. A new government formed, one that sought peace instead of conquest. Treaties were negotiated. Earth was recognized as a sovereign world, protected by galactic law. Cultural exchanges began, with humans and Valari learning from each other. It was not perfect. Centuries of mistrust could not be erased in days. There were those on both sides who wanted war, who could not accept peace. But slowly, carefully, things began to change. Yuna chose to remain on Earth. She had no place in Valari society anymore, and she did not want one. Everything she cared about was here. 6 months after the battle, she and HFY stood on a hillside in Jeju Island, watching the sunrise. The sky turned gold and pink, colors she had never seen on her cold homeworld. Birds sang in the trees. Flowers bloomed in the meadows. Yuna no longer wore robes or starlight crystal. She dressed in simple human clothes, jeans and a soft sweater. Her silver blue skin glowed in the morning light. HFY stood beside her, his hand in hers. "Do you regret it?" he asked quietly. "Everything you gave up?" Yuna thought about the question. She thought about the palace she had left behind, the power and privilege, the life that had been planned for her since birth. She thought about her father, now fallen and forgotten. She thought about Lord HFY, who would have made her a prisoner in her own marriage. Then she thought about this moment. The warmth of the sun, the sound of birds, the feel of HFY's hand in hers, the freedom to choose her own path. "No," she said, smiling. "I regret nothing." HFY smiled back. "Good, because there is something I want to ask you." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Inside was a ring, simple but beautiful, made of earth silver with a tiny blue stone. "I know we come from different worlds," he said, his voice slightly nervous. "I know there will be challenges we cannot even imagine yet. But I also know that I love you. And if you will have me, I want to spend the rest of my life making you happy." Yuna stared at the ring, then at him. Tears filled her eyes, but they were not sad tears. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, yes, yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. She threw her arms around him and kissed him as the sun rose higher and the world grew bright around them. Far above, the stars still shone. Out there were empires and wars, species rising and falling, the endless dance of civilization across the galaxy. But down here, on this small blue planet, two people from different worlds had found something more powerful than all of it. They had found each other, and that was enough. Yuna looked up at the sky one last time. Somewhere out there was the world she had left behind. A world of cold beauty and colder hearts. A world that had never understood her. She turned away from it and looked at Jiseok instead. "What happens now?" he asked. Yuna laughed, a sound full of joy and freedom. "Everything," she said. "Everything happens now." And hand in hand, they walked into their future together.